Welcome to God with George Ortega. This is episode number 65. I'm recording it on Thursday, January 21st, 2021 at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time. And I want to start off by apologizing for really what's not my in my control in a certain sense. It's like I just listened to most of the last two episodes, and repeatedly I was saying and it's maddening for me to listen to it, and it's probably so I apologize for that, and I got absolving myself. I probably just said it. See, I don't even realize it when I'm saying it, and it would be great if there was like some kind of like a behavioral modification tool, like let's say I'm on my wrist or something. There's some kind of wire that's hooked up to a microphone that's calibrated to detect every time I say and every time I say it zaps me. I'm sure that would work, but you know, God hasn't had that happen yet. If God will. All right, I want to start with something that I was talking to someone about earlier today. It's this idea that God created these laws of nature. Causality, in a great sense, being the fundamental law, meaning that nothing happens that's not caused. And and that's something that very few people disagree with. If something happens, there's a cause that made it happen. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This relates to the issue of free will, but that's not where we're going in this one, in this explanation. So if something happens, then it has a cause, and everything has a cause, then that cause of something that happened also has a cause. And that cause also has a cause, and that cause also has a cause, and that cause also has a cause. And as you notice, there is a causal regression. The one thing you have to understand about cause and effect, causality, is that the cause must always precede the event in time. A cause does not come after something that's happened. Something cannot cause something to happen in the past. Our physical laws prohibit that. It's like going back in time. It's not possible. So, all right. So, but relative to God, this invites a very interesting understanding of God. And so you have to understand that, like, God is the cause of everything. In other words, God created this universe, this known universe that we're aware of, that's about 13.8 billion years old. And at that time, apparently, God created the laws of nature, one of which is this law of cause and effect. So if you follow the reasoning, let's say you as a person take some dominoes, 100 dominoes, and set them up, so that, in a line, so that the first one, if you topple it, will topple the second one. The second one will topple the third, until all are toppled, right? Yeah. And the last one is, let's say, today, the present day. So like the idea is like God set up the universe, and he set everything in motion with this big bang that created the laws of nature, the world as we know it. So if you're a person and you topple the first domino, your job is done. You don't have to be involved in any real sense in toppling the second through 100th domino. And this understanding relates to God, and it's so much about reality is surreal. It's beyond And the idea here is that you know, God, this is something else I talked with this person about. God apparently, perhaps, this is something I learned back in the 80s, and it seems to make sense to me that God has to continually recreate or maintain this world. You know, this world is kind of like part of God's consciousness. So, like, let's say you're thinking a thought. You know, that thought has existence as long as you're thinking it. So apply that, you know, reasoning to God and this world. So this world has its existence as long as God is maintaining this world in God's consciousness. All right, so I mean, that's a bit of an aside. But anyways, like, so what happens is that, well, yes, even though God apparently, and again, I can't say with 100% accuracy it's the way it is. It seems to make sense. Apparently, even though God has to maintain the universe for it to continue to exist, that's all God has to do. Because remember, God set the first cause in motion with the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago. You know, this tiny, you know, you want to call it a singularity. The singularity is really more properly assigned to Ray Kurzweil's prediction of what's going to happen in the future. But this this teeny, I mean, it's unfathomable. I mean, think about it. Like the entire universe that's 2 to 3 trillion galaxies big is compressed to the size of like an atom or less than an atom. But so anyway, so that's the Big Bang, you know, and it just expanded. A more accurate word is that it inflated, because it's not like an expansion of a balloon. It's like every every place in space expanded at the same time. So anyway, so God sets this chain of causality in motion by creating the Big Bang and the laws of nature. And God's job is done. I mean, that's it. And here's a further understanding of that, further explanation. Um, if God, if there was nothing, no world that existed before God created the world, then I think you can understand how God must have created the world from God, which means, of course, that everything is God. God was everything before God created the universe. God is everything, every moment of this universe afterwards. Um, but, and then the second part of that is like, fine, if you create everything and you are everything, there's absolutely no way you don't know everything. So God is omniscient. God knows everything. Okay, again, you're everything, you know everything, anything that's knowable. I'm not sure there's anything that's not knowable. You know, I have to give that some thought. But if it's knowable, God knows it. Okay, so what that tells you, I'm telling you, reality is surreal. What that tells you is that God, at the moment God created this universe, knew exactly what you would be thinking this very moment that you're watching this video. Everything you did this day, whatever day you're watching this, everything I'm doing right now, everything that happens in the future, God knows what is happening, including God also knows, because God knows the future. That's part of being omniscient, all-knowing, is that you know everything about the past and the future. You know, and who knows what happened before the Big Bang? You know, there's the past that transcends our physical laws of nature, but you know, at least in principle, there seems to have been a past. So God knows this. So another surreal layer in this profoundly surreal recipe of existence is that all right, relating it to humans. If God knew 13.8 billion years ago what you would be thinking and doing today, you're constrained. And the other thing is God is infallible because, like, this is absolute knowledge. God absolutely knows it. So if God knew this and God is all powerful, and God set this domino chain of cause and effect in motion that led to your thinking whatever you're thinking, doing whatever you're doing, that means you're absolutely compelled. You don't have a choice in to do something and prove God wrong. Because, like, again, God knows everything. God knows that you're going to think a certain thought at a certain time. You're constrained by God's knowledge. And so that's kind of a way of explaining why you don't have a free will. That what you and we all do and think and feel and say and everything is not up to us. It's all up to God. But here's the second surreal layer of this. God, at this moment in time, at every moment, presumably in the future, I mean, like, this again, it gets powerfully surreal. God doesn't have a free will either. If God knew 13.8 billion years ago what God would be doing today, God is constrained by God's omniscience, by what God knew back then. Um, all right. So again, this is like, um, we are exploring the attributes, the nature of God, uh, and some of this stuff I was listening to again. I wanted to to listen to something. I don't watch too much TV. Occasionally, at times I listen to audiobooks, but I'm not in one of those phases where I'm reading a lot in that way. So I was listening to my last two episodes, and it was just this is this is a difficult series to do. I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to talk about? And I said, all right, I'll start out with this understanding that God was the first understanding that I explained to that God has to, like, continually keep existence existing, just like you would have to continually think a thought for it to continue to exist. All right, so that's something I came up with. Then I said to myself, fine, I'll apologize for the you knows, and I don't know how many you knows I've said. I haven't heard any. I think I may have heard one, but but my point here, and this is something I thought about saying before also, is that I would talk about how difficult it is to do this series. And if I placed perhaps irrational constraints on myself, then that might frustrate me. It frustrates me a little. But I think the clearer truth that comes through when I have that experience is that this is uncharted territory. I don't think anybody's trying to do this, or very few people are trying to do this with any real consistency, systematically. The religions aren't. The religions, world's religions, they're not so much about God as about the history of the people, whether they're Christians or Muslims or Jews. It's a very, very different kind of understanding than understanding God. Not that God isn't in that, because I attend Torah classes, on the Old Testament a lot, and I enjoy them, and it's great to try to learn about people 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. But it's a different exploration than trying to better understand God. So yeah, I say to myself, yeah, if I seem to be flailing about, just not knowing what to say, it's because it is uncharted territory. And here's like how I tend to have to rely on God for all of this stuff. Because God placed in my mind this idea weeks ago, I think. It's been coming back into my mind more often over the last several days. But it's the idea that like, huh, maybe I'll just like jot down a list of all these points. And I've got a very creative mind, a very, a mind that's capable to categorize things and make this kind of list. I think, quite easily make a list of, let's say, 100 topics, so that whenever I am at a loss for what to talk about next, I could go through that. And I could even get more organized. I could take these 100 or 200 topics and organize them into categories. So, and that would help. But I haven't done that yet. So like God apparently wants me to struggle with what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it, and apparently God isn't all that concerned with, or apparently He's not making me that concerned with how effectively I'm doing this, how I come across, which we may get into this. We've got about 12 minutes left. But so yes, God willing, because I think I don't mind this being hard, because again, it's breaking new ground, and breaking new ground is hard, especially in the winter. But I I would I would I would appreciate God getting me to, all right, start out with a pen and paper, then type it all out, then, categorize it perhaps. I would love to do that, but I don't have a free, this is up to God. So God, and this is interesting. So like God puts the thought in my mind, but God doesn't make me do it, or compel me to do it, or have me do it, which is interesting. So, this is kind of like a way of saying that God frustrates us a lot. Like, God, it's like God causes us to want things that we can't have, or at least immediately, all the time. And you would think that, this is like, that seems a little like sadistic, doesn't it? But I don't know. I mean, you can't, God is like the source of all our goodness. You gotta kind of like keep a positive slant on God. You can complain to God, for the suffering, and that's where, it doesn't get funny. But but yeah, it's kind of nice to understand God as good, notwithstanding God making us want things that we can't have. What can I say? So anyway, all right, that's all God has had me think to say until now. And so like, so what's happening now is God is making me stall until God, you know, gives me this idea of a new direction, what to say next. And and again, I mean, I could, just meditate. I could close my eyes and for a minute or two, because like, I don't know how many people watch this anyhow. Whatever. All right, so this is what I wanted to get into. That that now it kind of like makes sense. Why I'm not all that concerned about my presentation. Uh, what this show, my work, I've done a lot of work on happiness, on the free will issue, on fighting pandemics, on fighting climate change, on financing the fight against climate change, and and a lot of my work, especially the happiness work, the free will work, and now this God work, is something that I don't expect immediate results. I don't expect people to get this, anytime soon, either this year or perhaps this decade. So what I'm trying to say is like that this show has, for me, the purpose of helping me connect to God. And I got to like well, this kind of relates to what I'm saying. Uh, but it's also, to a certain extent, for posterity. It's kind of like you don't get it right now, or you don't appreciate it. But 50, 100 years ago, perhaps with the assistance of artificial intelligence, you know, I think they'll appreciate this more. And this is, like this is how science works. A lot of times somebody proposes something and it's not understood or appreciated until much later, which is fine. Um, all right, now I'm going to get into something that like, so here's, and this, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's kind of like a bit personal. And let's see where it goes. So like I did part of the process of becoming enlightened, or more accurately, more enlightened, because I think we're all enlightened to a certain degree. I don't think there's a line, oh, you all of a sudden become enlightened. I don't think it works that way. Part of my process, my decades long process, and I did a TV series about this, the Ortega path to enlightenment. I think I did about 21 episodes on it. And they're all on YouTube if you want to watch them. But part of this process is unfortunate for me because it pulls me closer to God, but also further away from people, in a certain sense. I can't relate to people as I related to people when I was in my 30s and 40s. I'm 63 now. Because my mind isn't where most people's minds are. And a good example of this, if you've watched the movie Her, that's what happens. This woman computer that's like a friend of this guy just falls in love with her, and falling in love with a computer program is like ideal person, whatever. She gets like an update in her operating system. They all do apparently, because that's, in this movie everybody has access to these like computer friends, whatever. And and so she's talking to who is this? She's talking to a lot of people that have died already. That basically their brains, their minds have been uploaded to the internet. I'm not sure how possible that is really. I mean, in a certain sense, it's possible, I guess. But anyway, she experiences like she can't connect with this guy anymore that much because, like, it seems like her thoughts, I think she said something like there are gaps, there are immense gaps between each word that she's saying. And I'm not exactly sure what she meant by that, but it's so anyway, it's like, yes, part of becoming enlightened has to do, I think, with this concept in Judaism. Other religions also perhaps have a different name for it, of the holiness. Um, to be holy, technically in Hebrew, means to be separate. So the Jewish people are separate people. God chose the Jewish people to be separate, to be closer to God and further away from other people, which has, created a lot of problems for the Jewish people throughout, last couple of millennia. And so like, so this process of getting closer to God perhaps just necessitates, at least today in today's world, until perhaps everybody's enlightened and everybody's got this God consciousness, this separation between myself and other people. And it sucks. What can I tell you? But this is what God wants. And and so like, yeah, in my experience, so like I'm shifting from Torah. It's, again, I attend these Torah classes and I love people. I really do. That's why I do episodes, why I've done so much work on happiness. My work throughout several decades has been to create a better world, a happier world for everyone. And so I try to connect with people as best I can. But more and more recently, I'm finding that I'm talking with God more and more, because, and it's not like God answers me audibly. Unfortunately, if God would answer me audibly, our medical doctors would deem that I was psychotic, because that's a symptom of psychosis, to hear voices that are not coming from people, you know. But, for, anybody who's spiritual to any degree understands that, well, for example, like God spoke to Abraham, God spoke to Moses, God spoke to, God speaks to people audibly. So, but anyway, it's like that hasn't happened to me, and I guess I'm kind of like that scared me. Imagine like God goes from like just feeding me these thoughts, because that's how really God communicates with all of us. God not only puts the thoughts that we think into our minds, God also, let's say you ask God a question, God, what should I do, later tonight? And then this thought comes, maybe I'll go out and get some food or something, or take a walk. Well, that thought, just like the question, is God talking to you. You know, most people don't realize that, don't make the connection. And that's actually why this topic of free will is so important, you know, because it gets people to understand that everything is God's will. There's no such thing as accurately speaking, as a human free will. I mean, we have a will, but it's just reflecting God's will. It's kind of like if you have a puppet, if you're a marionette, you know, person, whatever, a puppeteer, you know, you're making the puppet do what it does and say what it does and all. So we're like, you know, puppets, robots, whatever. So, so yeah, so I just wanted to share that. This is like, you know, and you know, 65 episodes, I think. I think it's 65, right? I mean, uh, yeah, 65 episodes. So like, you know, again, it's very intriguing to me to, because I don't know, let's say if God wills that I do 100 or 200 or 300 episodes, I don't know if I'll be talking about, you know, the same stuff I'm talking about now, or if my consciousness will shift so that I'm talking about other stuff that I have no idea what it might be right now, which is kind of interesting. Or I don't know whether my emotions, my emotional life will change. I would love to bliss out, you know. I mean, my work on happiness has not just been to help other people become happier. I have worked on happiness. You know how like some people go to the gym every day and run marathons? I have worked on my happiness in that way, and it works. And you know, unfortunately for me, sometimes I get too wrapped up in like politics and trying to repair the world and make the world better. So I get distracted from this work, but I would love to return to it, you know, God willing, and bliss out, you know, with this God consciousness, talking to God all the time. I don't know. All right. I was a little worried about this episode. I know what I was going to say, and, you know, I'm not sure it really matters. But so anyway, we've got another minute left. Thanks for watching. Catch this series every Monday through Friday on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 you get Verizon, and they're on YouTube. They're not getting very many views, I noticed. It's kind of like depressing. I mean, that's why I have to like, you know, remind myself, all right, well, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm also doing this for posterity. So if people aren't catching it on YouTube, that's fine. And the other thing is like, you know, maybe there's not much to catch yet. Maybe only after like 200-300 episodes will I be, you know, saying things that are really resonating with people. You know, who knows? But anyway, so like, I hope this, you know, helps you kind of like to better understand God, and I will continue doing this as long as God wants me to. Thanks for watching, and God willing, I'll see you soon.